Hello and welcome to Season 2 Episode 16 of Paradise Preview. I'm Josh Gaffney and I'm joined by Graham Wilson from Beyond the Waves as we look ahead to Celtic's game against St Mirren. So on Wednesday there, Celtic overcame Arbroath thanks to a sweet strike from Adam Matthews that went straight into the
upper 90.
That's right, but this weekend we're coming up against SPL strugglers St Mirren, who are currently 11th in the SPL table. I'm going to hand you over to Graham Wilson.
That's right, Josh. So Neil Lennon and the troops are fully focused back on the SPL, and we did have a bit of unfinished business. That's right, like you mentioned, against Arbroath midweek, the matter of the Scottish Cup and tying up loose ends there. And it wasn't a thing of beauty. Like you mentioned, Adam Matthews opening a Celtic account. It's kind of surprising that he hasn't scored yet as a Celtic player, but nonetheless, what a way to open his account. I mean, just a tremendous strike into the upper 90. I thought it probably caught more of the side netting, if I'm being honest, but I'm not going to pass up an opportunity to call out an upper 90. But we did see out the result, some shaky moments in the back. I think, a lot of these players have played a lot of football this fall. We keep talking about it. We keep referring to this as an issue, but there were a couple other factors at play. Obviously, the weather was not our friend away to Arbroath on Wednesday night, and I think that some of the players had an issue with the timing of the game. Specifically, the trying to match up the timing and the tendencies from the competition that they're used to going up against. This can work on both ends. If you go up against an opponent that's going to be much quicker than you're accustomed to, that can throw you off. But even sometimes when you go up against an opponent that might be a bit slower than you're accustomed to. So nonetheless, I'm just delighted that we got the result and we can move on in the Scottish Cup. But we have the issue of the SPL. Currently, we're 3 points ahead at the top of the SPL table with a game in hand. And going up against St Mirren, this should be, we should obviously have this well in hand, this result, and really dictating the style and the pace of play. Now, Josh, one tendency that Neil Lennon has reverted back to over these past couple of games, both this past weekend and on Wednesday, was three at the back, having essentially a 3-5-2 or even like a 3-4-1-2 at certain times, especially with Sammy drifting in and out of the central as a center forward and then drifting out wide left in his more preferred, more effective role. But nonetheless, I think that's had a certain level of efficacy, having the spare man in the midfield, making sure that we're not going to get overrun, and then having a bit more success in the link-up, especially looking back towards last Saturday. Is this something that you can see continuing on, so that we can get some of these players some more time and fit them into the side where they can be effective?
Well, basically, the issue has been domestically that, we've not been effective as we could have been up front. The 3-5-2, I think it worked very well against Kilmarnock. Plenty of attacking opportunities, were very good in the break. And also, we had that fantastic goal that was finished by George Samas. We're finding a lot of space. It was an entertaining game to watch. No players were really kind of fixed into their position. There was a lot of freedom of movement, a lot of creativity throughout the game. But then we come up against Arbroath and a 3-5-2 against a sort of 4-5-1 kind of formation, a team that's kind of been heavily defensive.
It's kind of a waste.
It doesn't always work, especially when you've not really got wingers who can really drag the ball out wide and whip in a real good course. You've really got to have your fullbacks on form. Luckily, Adam Matthews was in form and found a lot of space on the right flank, getting in behind the left back and finished it brilliantly. But then after that, we weren't very clinical in the final third, I'd say, and then we had a few shaky moments at the back. But saying that, we didn't even manage to get a shot on target. So it wasn't a bad game. We rode it out. We got a wee bit of luck here and there, but I think we deserved the win. Looking forward, 3-5-2, would that take into this game? I'd say maybe. I think it's good to consider it, especially being at home with a bigger pitch.
A couple of points here, Josh. First off, with regard to our finishing and our effectiveness in the final third, that's really been our Achilles heel this, so far this season. When we've run into trouble, we haven't been able to put away the chances that we create for ourselves, and that's worrying. Uh, Especially when you see Gary Hooper featuring in the side, in many cases, and just not having the effectiveness. And obviously, he's been out in and out of the side, and that obviously is going to take its toll in terms of his sharpness and at certain points his focus. But what I'm looking for is as he regains his fitness, his focus, and gets featured back into the starting 11, we see a return to the Gary Hooper that we all know and love. That is just as clinical, if not more clinical than anybody in Britain. Full stop. Now, another aspect that you brought up with regard to the 3-5-2, and just getting back to this, you're absolutely right. It was effective going up against Kilmarnock, and I think that it was a stroke of genius from Neil Lennon and the managerial side, knowing that Kenny Shields is going to go out in a 4-4-2. So that does two things. It sets you up for a man advantage at the back three. If you have three defenders going up against the two strikers, that gives you an advantage there. You have a spare man that can help out in certain circumstances. Plus, you have a spare man in the midfield. So that was extremely astute, and we saw the product of it. Now, to your point, going up against a 4-5-1, it's a bit of a waste. Having three men at the back, you have not just one, but two spare men. So that can lead to a bit of a disjointed effort, and maybe sometimes players, and especially the back three, getting confused as to who's got what area and how to sort of cover. And we saw certain situations where it looked like the back three was a bit confused, and it seemed to calm down somewhat when Neil Lennon reverted back to the 4-4-2. So it's horses for courses, strategies that you really can't be consistent because the opponent you're going to be going up against is not going to be consistent. And I think it really boils down to what Danny Lennon's tendency is going to be from St Mirren. Is he going to come to Celtic Park with one striker? Is he going to try and play 4-4-2? Is he going to I mean, that is really what it's going to boil down to. But nonetheless, I think the players have put the Champions League behind them, and they're fully focused on making sure that we get a good run in the SPL. We open up some space between ourselves and the rest of the teams so that when we get back into European competition, this isn't as much of a consideration or as much of an issue weighing on the players' minds. But how do you see the starting 11 stacking up based on that? Obviously the 3-5-2, like I mentioned, it works in certain circumstances, but it's not something that you can continue on with indefinitely. Might we see Neil Lennon revert back to more of a 4-4-2, maybe a 4-2-3-1? Tony Watt, it seems as though is not fully fit. He took a bit of a knock, and Chris Commons is not going to be available. But Georgios Samaras, I think, in certain spells on Wednesday looked very good, and he was just superb against Kilmarnock. Certainly, he's going to play and be a cornerstone of the attack. How do you see it shaping up against St Mirren?
Well, I think basically coming up against St Mirren and playing at home, our problem this season hasn't been really conceding a lot of goals. It's just really been putting the goals in the net. And I think really what Neil needs to focus on is his front line and how he's going to support that front line. So Guy Hooper, he's recently came back from injury, so he's a great guy to have up front. So do you go with put a second man up front with him? Or do you put two men behind him? Do you play with wingers? Do you play a 3-5-2 with the fullbacks? I would say for this game, I'd go for a 4-4-2, basically to get the wingers in. Then up front, the two men up front, I'd put Hooper and Lassad. Lassad, he's impressing me when he's had the ball at his feet. Then, the question is, how do you support him? Back line, Matthews, right back, he's looking very consistent now. He's actually our top assistee with 7 assists ahead of anyone else. Centre back, Ambrose, Kevin Wilson. It's kind of been picking itself recently. Then at left back, you've got a choice between Izagiri and Mulgrew. I didn't think Izagiri looked at his best against Arbroath. It still looks like he's kind of coming back from injury a little bit. Yeah. So I think he might put Mulgrew there, to get a better deliver into the box than Izagiri. Right wing, now that was a wee bit of a tough one. You had Ibrahim, played a very good game. recently. You've got Dylan McGeoch who's coming back. I'd say maybe start Dylan McGeoch, just to give us some pace out wide on the right wing.
I agree.
You know, and just bring in some pace down the wings and stretch the field of play. Centre midfield, Brown, he's been playing very good recently. Not sure if he'll play due to his physical condition recently. But you've also got Ledley, Wanyama, and Kyle, so we've got plenty of bodies there. If Brown's available, I'd like to have him next to Victor Wanyama. Left wing, I think Samaras kind of be picking itself. There's no one else who can really play there. You've got Commons, but I'm not sure how his leg is really holding up right now.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be available.
If Commons is available, he's 100%. I'd say he'll probably end up playing on the right ahead of Dylan McGeoch. But if he's not available, put Dylan McGeoch there. And then up front, as I said before, Lasard and Hooper, just really stuck in the box and put the goals in the net.
Yeah, I'd essentially agree with the cornerstone of that layout there. The only adjustment that I would make, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that a classic 4-4-2. When you have Georgios Samaras in the midfield, he's not going to be your classic winger if you're going to put him on the left side of the midfield, left wing, if you will, because he doesn't track back. Only in exceptional circumstances is he going to come back and try and slow down an advancing winger before he hands it off to the left back, either Izagiri or Charlie Mulgrew. So I would almost class it more of a 4-3-1-2. And I guess it depends on Lasad himself. Gary Hooper needs to be the tip of the spear, just considering what his skill set is and what he's not so good at. He needs to be on the front line. If you want to drop Lasad back and then have a sort of Lasad being the right-sided Samaras and have like a Christmas tree formation, I think that's quite good as well. But this opens up a couple of different possibilities. First off, it opens up a good utility for Charlie Mulgrew, where he can find a place in the middle of the park, in the midfield, if you will, and be effective. When we've seen Charlie Mulgrew in the midfield of a 4-4-2, it's just been atrocious. He doesn't have the skill set, the mobility, and the instinct to play in that sort of position. But when he has that more of a defensive mindset of even a 4-2-3-1, but certainly as we saw away to Spartak, away in Moscow, when we did play more of a Christmas tree formation, he was exceptional on that left side of the three midfield bank of three, if you will. So, back four, I would agree, except for Mulgrew, I would still stick with Izagiri. Now, obviously, he came off. He didn't play the full 90 minutes, and Neil Lennon sort of hinted at the fact that he's just coming back from injury. They don't want to press him too much and sort of overextend him. And I think that's wise, but he does need time, and he does need to play his way back into form. So the back four: Matthews, Ambrose, Wilson, Izagiri, and then I'd have a midfield three of Scott Brown, Victor Wanyama, and it's just going to come down to either Joe Ledley or Charlie Mulgrew. I think it's going to have to come down to whoever's more fit, and I think at this moment it's probably going to be Charlie Mulgrew. Joe Ledley's been battling sort of the niggling injuries, and I'm just uncertain about that. So I'd probably start off with Charlie Mulgrew on the left-hand side of that. Samaras sort of being the link-up man, is obviously more tied to that left-hand flank, but he's going to be advancing out of there. And then, like you mentioned, Lasad and Hooper up top together. And it's just interesting to see the dynamic that they're starting to form and the partnership that they're starting to form. Almost not to the extent that Anthony Stokes and Gary Hooper had in terms of the nonverbal relationship that it seemed that they had, but it does seem as though Lasad and his sort of creative spark, but with a striker's instinct, is working well at times with Gary Hooper. So, hopefully we can forge that along and find a way to have Gary Hooper be back to his most effective self. So, in terms of the scoreline, let's put it all out there. Let's make our predictions here. What are you expecting, Josh, in terms of the score?
Well, so far at home this season, we've played 6 league games and we've only scored 7 goals and conceded 6 goals.
That's atrocious.
So I'm going to say a change, a 3-1.
Yeah, I like it. Like you mentioned before, this isn't a St Mirren side that's going to light the Heather ablaze and just find goals from all different places. If we can put more than one goal up, I think that we're safe. But like you mentioned, this is almost like a dam that's just building up and building up, and there's pressure that's building up. And I think there's goals in this team that we do have chances at times, but we've been a bit wasteful. If we can hunker down and we can really focus and sharpen up our sort of our finishing and our final product, then there is some explosiveness in this team. I'm going to go one better. I'm going to say 4-1.
Okay, that's a good prediction. Hopefully, it's a good game in the day for a change for Celtic in the Premier League.
Fingers crossed.
Hail, hail, and keep the faith.
Yeah.